Good evening. I'm Roger Simpson, and welcome to my first live streaming event on this, the 5th of October 2022, which is Happy Publication Day in Australia. I'm actually in New Zealand at the moment, so I haven't even got any copies of the book. They sent me some, but they're yet to arrive. I'm hoping that problem doesn't happen in Australia, and I'm hoping the books all arrive in the bookshops on time today, have already arrived on time today. Happy Publication Day. And I have a nice glass of wine here from the publisher. At least that got here on time. So good luck to myself, and good luck to you as you join me, if you join me. Oh, I see people are coming up already. Hello, Wendy. Hello, Carolyn. Hello, Sharon. Welcome. I hope you've got lots of questions. And hi, Charlie. People are joining. That's encouraging. And hi, Kylie. A Halifax fan, that's always good to see. And Wendy, hello Wendy. People are joining, that's encouraging. Nothing worse than a live streaming event where you're talking to yourself. So that's fantastic. Hi, Carolyn. Good. We're getting a nice little group here. I hope I haven't missed anybody out. Sharon, Carolyn, Wendy, Charlie, Kylie, another Wendy, Carolyn, Rayleigh, Gab. Fantastic. Happy Publication Day indeed, Gab. Thank you for noticing that. So here we are. It's a big event for me. It seems strange. I'm like a writer with owl plates on. I've been writing television for more years than I count to admit, want to admit, but this is my first book. I wish I'd done it 20 years ago. It's been a fantastic, if somewhat terrifying experience. Hi, some more people joining. Ruth, welcome. And Jane, welcome. Who loved the book and got an advanced copy. Thank you very much, Jane. Thank you for that. Yes, as I said, it was a pretty terrifying experience. Hi, Sharon. How long did this book take you to write? Well, that's not a bad question to start with. About a year. By the time you work out why you're writing the book, which takes a bit of a while, and then you plot out the shape of the book, which takes another 2 or 3 months. And then you've got to work out the ending, because in crime fiction, if you don't know the ending, people end up throwing the book at the wall. So that's another month or 2. And then the first draft takes about 6 months, which leaves you with about 3 months to do the rewriting and the editing. So about a year. It's about a year to write a book, I think, in my experience, limited to one experience of one. But as I was starting to say before, it was scary for me, because in prose, unlike television, you've got no one else to blame. You can't blame the director. You can't blame the actors for getting it wrong. You can't blame the network for programming it at a stupid time. You can't blame the investors and all the interfering they do as they protect their investment. It's just you and the reader, and that's a pretty scary thing. So how different is writing a book versus TV production? Well, the process, I guess, because you're writing the equivalent of a mini-series on your own, that's why it takes 12 months, whereas in television, you'd probably have a team of 4 writers writing the equivalent of a book in, say, 8 episodes. They'd write 2 episodes each. So they'd be expected to do that in 2 or 3 months, to write 2 episodes, and plus the time they spend in the writer's room helping each other plot and work out the detail. So it's a lonelier job, but it's a more satisfying one because you get to control the whole process. Hi, Yvonne. Hi, Kylie. What's some of these questions? What made me decide to write the book? Asked Kylie. And are you planning on writing any more? Well, yes. Why I decided to write the book was the publisher came along and said, why don't you write some books based on the Halifax series? And I thought, oh, yes, that sounds like a good idea. I don't know if I can do it, but I'm prepared to give it a go. They say, we don't want one, they said, we want 3. So I guess to answer your question, Kylie, I'm writing the first of 3 books in the first series. Halfway through the second as we speak. And the third one I'll write next year. So in 3 years, you'll get 3 books, barring accidents. So that's answering that question. There's another one here. Well, without giving any spoilers, says Gab, where did you get your inspiration for the murderer and murders? Well, the inspiration, it didn't start with the murder and the murderers. You start with the reason you're writing the book, and you start with what you want to say. You start with the journey you want to put Jane Halifax on, what you want Jane to learn along the way, what you want her to discover. And you want to find some humanity amongst these crimes as well. And of course, the worse the crime, the greater and more difficult the search for humanity is. And so I ended up wanting to create really seriously bad, cruel crimes, because I think sadism is something which hasn't really been explored in very much in murder mystery or crime novels. And when it comes to sadism, the worst example of it was medieval torture perpetrated by the Catholic Church in the medieval times. And I thought somebody who was inspired by those appalling things that they did to humans back then was about as bad as you could get. So that if Jane had to confront that and analyze it and understand it and find some humanity in it, however contradictory that sounds, it sounded like a pretty good journey to put her on. Some more questions. Who was your favourite character, asked Charlie, to write in Halifax? Well, in this book, the one who was the most fun was a cop called Showbag, an old-style cop who went back to the days when I first started writing cop shows, way back in the days of Hector Crawford, when police work wasn't as sophisticated as it is now. It's all mobile phones and internet, and it's not that hard to track people down. It used to be. It used to be good old-fashioned footwork, trying to work out where people were and where they'd gone. And Showbag is an old-fashioned cop. So I enjoyed going back to my early days of cop show writing, and I enjoyed creating Showbag. He was kind of loosely based on a police advisor we had at Crawford's in the old days called Jim Pulse, sadly no longer with us, but I like to think of Showbag as a bit of a tribute to Jim, and I think he might be a lot of people's favourite character, after Jane, of course. Some more questions. What else have I got here? This is Carolyn asks, do you write sequentially or do you jump back and forth with the timeline? In Transgression, I wrote sequentially. In the next book, because I thought that was, it was satisfying, but I wanted to challenge myself more. I do play with time a lot and jump between a case that Jane had in the old days, which in retrospect she considers to be her greatest failure because she thought the result was wrong and that the court found someone guilty when they were innocent and she was representing that person. And that case has troubled her a lot, and it comes back to haunt her when events bring that old case back into the present. And so with the second book, I jump constantly between the original case and the case in the present, and which gives her an opportunity to solve a crime that she failed to solve the first time round. Did I learn, this is from Cassandra, did I learn anything about Jane's character when I transitioned to writing her novel? Well, yes, Cass, I did. Because for the very first time, I had to write what was inside her head. In television drama, you infer what's inside her head through action. You portray the drama, you don't spell it out because that's considered to be expository. But in the novel, there's nothing wrong with exposition. You can explain exactly what's going on inside Jane's head. And so not only did I explain what was inside Jane's head, for the very first time, I had to look inside her head and intuit what she was thinking in reality, not by subtext, which is how you do it in drama. You imply what she's thinking, but you don't actually spell it out. That's against the rules of drama, apparently. So what else have I got here? I've got some congratulations. Thank you, Kylie, for that. I don't know if I can spool back some of these ones I've missed. How different is writing a book versus TV production? Well, writing a book is enjoyable. Television production is just hard work. It's I don't miss it. I miss the writing side of television. I hope to do some more television. I hope there's more Halifaxes, but I will only be a writer in the future. I won't be a producer. A producer is just hard work. It's just one problem after the next. The reason I did it, I think, in the first place was to protect the work. But I'd much prefer it if someone else was doing that job and not me. What else have I looking here? Some people are lucky enough to get advanced copies. Other people are still waiting to it to appear in the bookshop. Ruth said, I'm definitely not talking to myself, which is very encouraging to hear. I think that's pretty much. I better go down to the bottom now and see if I've missed any out. Please keep your questions coming thick and fast. Dan asks, what can you do in print that you can never do on network television? Well, strangely enough, you can do more graphic storytelling. I don't think the crimes in Halifax Transgression could have been reproduced on television. But somehow when you describe them, because you're not just describing the physical nature of the crimes, you're really describing the impact it has on the people who investigate the crime and the family of the victim. I think that gives it, in print, that gives it a much more human level. And that humanity takes the curse off what in television would just be graphic and appalling and not explained. There's no editorialization when you just see something awful. It's a bit like the terrible news that you see in Ukraine of some of those terrible war crime scenes. There's no way to sort of introduce humanity into dead bodies. And those awful images of that humanitarian convoy, which was attacked by the Russians, I think 48 hours ago. If you describe the same thing in prose, your humanity, the humanity of the writer, I know I'm overusing that word tonight, but it requires you to put the event in context. And the context kind of saves us, both the writer and the reader, in a way that sometimes television doesn't have a chance to. Is that an answer? I think it's some kind of answer. It's my answer anyway. Kylie asks, will I be sticking to crime novels after I finish writing the Halifax series? I have a couple of books in me which aren't crime stories. Time is the enemy, and it's a question of will I get round to doing it. I've got a book I want to write about the dingo, which is facing extinction, which is not a protected animal in Australia. It's not considered to be a native Australian animal because it came here 5,500 years ago with Indonesian fishermen. It's not protected. And within 30 years, it won't exist outside zoos or reserves. I'd like to write a book about the dingo. I think the dingo's been here long enough to be considered Australian and to be protected, but its interbreeding in the outback with feral dogs is facing extinction. I'd like to write that book. Maybe it could be the subject for a Halifax book. Maybe I can do both together. Maybe Jane has to go and solve the problem somehow. I like writing crime fiction. I've been doing it in television most of my career. So we'll wait and see. We shall wait and see. What else have I got here? What is the next Jane Halifax project? The next Jane Halifax story? I don't want to give too much away about that. I'm writing it at the moment. I'm only halfway there. She has a terrible accident at the beginning of the story. And when she wakes up, she can't remember who she is. And that combined with what I said earlier on about the fact that there's this case that's been a problem for her all her life, the one big failure in her young life as a forensic psychiatrist, she manages to revisit that as well. In fact, she uses that as a means of recovering her memory. And that's enough. That's enough of a teaser for the next book. The third book, not going to tell you about that. What else have I got here? So many questions. Thank you very much. And so many compliments. Thank you. Marie, thank you for that lovely compliment. More compliments. Thank you, Kylie. Let me go. I think how are we going? I think I've, please ask again if you think I've missed your question, because I've got so many of them here. Please repeat it if you think I've missed your question. Lots of compliments. Thank you very much. A fan of the Halifax show again. That's good to see. What else have I got? This is a good question. Carolyn, as a male, did you find it challenging to write for Jane? That's a very good question. I don't think it's challenging to write a female character, because you can't only write male characters. But you do have to get into the head of the character. You have to do that with any character, male, female, or otherwise. You have to get into the head of that character. But once you're in, and it can be just as much a challenge in a male character to formulate a character that feels real, that feels authentic, that feels so true to himself or herself, that they start behaving in a way that is authentic to them. Then you know you've got the character. Now, that's just as much a challenge for a male character, creating a male character, creating Showbag, for instance, or the Eric Ringer character, based on the character originally played by Hugh Jackman. It's just as challenging to flesh out a real, true, living, breathing character, whatever their gender. So I think it's best for a writer not to worry about whether they're male or female, just to worry about whether the character is properly formed, is real, is authentic, and is starting to speak with their voice and not your voice anymore. Of course, it really is your voice, but you know what I mean. You give them a voice, and you give them mannerisms, and you give them a style of talking, a style of dress. You give them an age, a milieu, a background, relationships, a house to live in, which reflects who they are, a car that they drive, who reflects who they are, a way of walking and talking that reflects who they are. And if you put enough of these bits together, before you know it, you're writing Jane Halifax. So it's just the hard work you put into the creation of any character, really. It can be intimidating if you worry about it, and you should worry about whether the character is fully fleshed out or not. That's worth worrying about, but not whether they're male or female. No. I don't think a writer can work if they worry about that. I think they just are in some strange single gender universe which doesn't exist. So, how are we going? What else have I got? Cass asks again, asks another question. Do you find it difficult to write murder series in such graphic detail? I think if you're going to write crime shows and they involve a violent crime, I think there's an obligation to write in graphic detail. I don't think you can pussyfoot around it and pretend it's anything other than what it is. If you're writing about someone who has taken their a sadist who has taken their inspiration from medieval torture, there's no nice way to write that. You kind of miss the point if you don't write that terrible crime in all its graphic reality. It's appalling graphic reality. And I think you don't reflect the character properly either if you don't give an insight into that character's mind and motivation. Because they want to do something appalling and shocking. And you have to write that in order to let the reader get into the head of that person, and then let Jane get into the head of that person. Because if she can't get into the head of that person, she's never going to be able to figure him out and stop him. Or if she can't stop him, at least understand him and explain him to all those poor policemen who have to investigate this terrible crime. So it's not difficult to write, it's obligatory to write in graphic detail. If you choose to write about crime, you've got to write about the crime. You've got to write about what it is. You've got to explain to the reader and to the audience exactly what it is that you're writing about. That seemed to go down quite well. Thank you. Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you, Melissa. There's nothing worse, I think, than soft-soaping violence. I think that's what's obscene about violence. Violence on television where people are killed without a second thought when someone points a gun and shoots them, like they do in so many of those action movies, where the body count is horrendous. That's shocking to me. That's violent to me. That is unforgivable to me. But if you write the story of each victim, I think there's a chance you may save the story. That's the Roger Simpson version of writing violence. Thank you very much. I think we might be approaching the end. I've probably only got room for another one or two questions. Has anybody got a late one that they'd like to add? Just lots of thanks. I feel an end of a session coming on. I would like to thank everybody that signed in to this session on Happy Publication Day, and to come with me on my journey with my first book. Thank you very much. Thank you to the publisher for this delicious wine. I hope you've all got a glass of wine and can toast Halifax Transgression with me. Long may it last, all the way through to Christmas and beyond, let's hope. Thank you very much. I'm very grateful for you all for signing in. Thank you.